20 years. 20 years is a time when you begin to think that life will always be the way you know it. You build your life, your relationships, you create a family, a home, dreams. But what happens when everything that seemed unshakable suddenly starts disappearing? When you don't notice how the person you share your life with starts becoming a stranger? This is a story about how love doesn't leave immediately, but gradually. About how you can lose everything that once seemed so obvious and constant. About how every day doesn't bring change, but they accumulate, and one moment you realize it as a loss. This is the story of a man who lived in the belief that his love would last forever. And now, 20 years later, he realizes he was wrong. I often find myself returning to my childhood, trying to understand what led me here, to this life, to this love that is now fading away. My childhood was filled with silence. My mother was always nearby, cooking, taking care of us, but her gaze was always distant. I remember how often she sat at the table, pretending everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I saw her hands tremble when she set the table, how her eyes became empty when she thought about something I couldn't understand. My father, on the other hand, was the one who never spoke about feelings. He worked a lot and was always silent. He could sit in a chair and look at us, but his eyes were empty. It was like a quiet presence of something invisible that hung in the air. We never talked to each other about what troubled us. Everything was hidden behind this silence. I always asked myself, why doesn't she smile? Why are her eyes full of exhaustion? Why does my father never say that he loves us? I saw how she tried, how she cared for the house, for us, but her love was hidden, silent, like her own pain. And I probably didn't realize this as a child, but I certainly knew I didn't want to live like that. I decided that when I grew up, I would be different. I would talk about my feelings. I would show my love, not hide it. I would take care of my family, and my love would be sincere, not hidden behind silence. When I met Laura, it felt like I had entered another world. We met by chance, but it seemed to me that it was predestined. She was completely different. I felt like I could be myself around her, that I could talk about things I had previously kept silent about. She was sincere, open, and from the first glance, I realized I no longer needed to hide. We started dating, and every day with her was like a new discovery. We didn't rush, we weren't in a hurry. Everything was new and easy, and I realized I didn't need anything else but her. Laura was something real to me, something I had been missing. We laughed, talked about life, dreamed about the future. She told me about her childhood, and I felt how our lives intertwined, as if we had always known each other. I thought this would be forever. We weren't just partners, we were friends. We talked about everything, work, books, life. Laura introduced me to another world, a world where you didn't have to hide your feelings, where love was as natural as breathing. When we decided to live together, I felt like my life finally took shape. We bought a house, picked out furniture, talked about how we would live, how we would raise children. Everything seemed perfect. Laura was there, and I thought it would always be like this. We were building a house, we were building a life. I thought everything we created would be as strong and reliable as our love. When the children were born, I realized my life had gained new meaning. I didn't know what true happiness was until I became a father. It was the moment when I realized that love isn't limited to just us. Laura and I looked at our children with admiration, with pride, and I thought that now we had done everything right. We had created a family, we were building our house, and now our love had become something new, something deeper. Over time, I began to notice how Laura became more and more absorbed in her work. She came home late, her eyes became empty, and I couldn't understand what was happening. We stopped talking the way we used to. We spent evenings in silence. I tried to be attentive, tried to talk about what was bothering me, but she withdrew. I couldn't understand why. We had been together, and everything had been perfect. Why wasn't she looking at me the same way anymore? Why wasn't there that sincerity, that connection we had before? I often returned to my memories, to the time when we first met. I tried to find those sparks in our relationship that we had at the beginning, I thought I needed to work harder on myself, but everything I did seemed insufficient. Laura kept distancing herself, and I didn't know how to bring her back. I didn't know what to do. As each day passed, Laura became more and more silent. I tried to be there, tried to talk about what was bothering me, but her answers were short and detached. I tried to restore those moments when we sat at the table and simply laughed, but she didn't laugh anymore. I tried to think of what could have distanced her, but I didn't know what to answer my own questions. She didn't tell me what was wrong. I tried to be patient, but with each passing day, her gaze became more and more empty. She didn't look at me with love. I tried to find an explanation, but I couldn't. All I knew was she had become a stranger. We were in the same house, but we had become strangers. I started to feel how our love was slipping away without either of us noticing. When she admitted she had found someone else, I didn't know what to say. My heart broke. We had been together for 20 years. How could something that seemed eternal change so quickly? I couldn't believe that Laura could just leave for someone else. We had built our life, our dreams. But now I was standing alone. Everything I knew was crumbling. I tried to understand what went wrong, what caused this. Why hadn't she come to me when she felt something was wrong? Why didn't she talk to me? Instead, she left. I was confronted with this fact, and I didn't know what to do. My heart was torn, and I couldn't understand how this had happened to us. When she left, I felt everything I had built crumbling. I was left in a house that was full of memories of us. But now it had become empty. I didn't know what to do with this. Everything I once thought I knew had become foreign. The love that seemed eternal had gone, and I was left with emptiness. I sat in an empty room and thought about how we used to laugh, how we used to make plans. We thought everything would be forever. But now I realized that nothing stays the same. The love that seemed eternal had gone, and I was left with emptiness. My children began to notice the changes. They didn't understand what had happened. Why weren't Mum and I talking to each other anymore? Why had I become so withdrawn? My daughter asked me, "Why don't you laugh like you used to?" I didn't know what to answer. I didn't know how to explain to her that I had lost not only Laura, but also part of myself. She was too young to understand what love was, what loss was, what that emptiness is that remains when your world falls apart. My friends also began to notice that I had changed. They asked me what was happening, why I was avoiding meetings. I didn't know what to answer. I didn't know how to tell them that I had lost everything that was important to me. I tried to be with them, tried to stay afloat, but inside everything was empty. I started to understand that I had to let go. I couldn't get Laura back. I couldn't get back what we had lost, but I could learn to forgive. It's not easy, it's scary, but maybe this is what will give me the strength to move forward. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know what will happen with my life, but I know one thing. I have to let go of the past to move forward. I started to forgive myself. I started to realize that I can't change what happened, but I can change how I will live from now on. I will look for strength in myself, seek new meanings in life, and maybe this will become my salvation.